The Aperture of Discourse. I have established, hypothetically, let's assume now that with a conception of political spectrum left to right, that in the mid-century, 20th century, 1950s, 1960s, there was a decisive move toward the expansion of the political left, progressivism. 1960s progressivism, and coming out of France, associated with 1968 phenomena, but much more broadly and subsequently, Derrida, Lacan, Deleuze, Foucault, Bataille, people. Commonly associated with theories of cultural relativism, even relativism about truth, epistemic relativism, and at times very cynical theories of political phenomena according to power. Probably in the Nietzschean sense. Nietzsche is a big influence on 20th century French philosophy. So any notion of power, any time you hear somebody today use the word power in a non-mathematical, aka metaphorical or figurative sense, then it's going to have to be routed through Nietzsche one way or the other. So as far as I can see, that's as good a starting point as any. And if that's the case, you come to people like me who know Nietzsche like ABC. The Aperture of Discourse describes the Aufhebung that is underway, the Aufhebung that is underway right now. It is a consolidating aperture of discourse. Because if two sides of an antinomy cannot break themselves out of logical, ideological deadlock, with either discourse or power, because the discourse breaks down in epistemic relativism, and we don't allow pure coercion, because that's distasteful and that's anti-civilization and so on. Pure coercion is at the basis of the decision toward civilization. Civilization is a gesture away from pure coercive force. So, once upon a time, you put Foucault versus Chomsky, right, in debate in Holland or wherever it was, Belgium, I don't remember. The Foucault-Chomsky debate about human nature, right? And I still don't know if Chomsky gets the joke. I mean, this was all already a joke then. William F. Buckley. How about that one? William F. Buckley. And, people that I find favor with, the Bill Cristols of the world, who really kind of, I'm sorry, Professor Crystal, but, you really kind of play dumb a little bit. I don't know, like you didn't know what it was. So the Bill Cristols of the world come to the realization finally, that their side, in fact, did not stand for capital T truth, formal truth, proper truth, conservative truth, Burkean truth, Edmund Burke. It did not at all, but rather, or at least the underbelly, the pre-literate faction of the system takes over. The pre-literate faction takes over and leaves all the theorists in the dust. And it takes roughly between William F. Buckley and Bill Crystal, I guess, for the right to kind of catch up to problems about cultural relativism and raw power and so on. They finally catch up and they start really exploiting both elements of it, epistemic relativism and brute force together. And is it as though now the left scratches its head and thinks, well, what do we have? Well, again, we are philosophers of religion, are we not? And we are philosophers of morality and ethics, are we not? And do we not have paraconsistent logic and paraconsistent logic and non-classical logic on our side? Yes, we do. So whereas once upon a time in the 20th century, if the dialectic was roughly phenomenological intuition versus capital T formal truth, now the formal truth side takes up with the most unsavory bedfellows, right? Relativists who are absolutists about power. So relativists in all other, there's actually not that much relativism involved in it, because if you're an absolutist about power, that's your Achilles heel. You're going to have to bind yourself to some kind of discourse like that. And, Stephen Miller already has. Oh, yeah, it's the real reality and force and power. Okay. Yeah, they have to bind themselves to that discourse. They already painted themselves into a corner. You try to make something theoretical that inherently has no theoretical rational content, as, uncivilization or barbarism has no real theoretical content. It's just one big mess of inconsistencies. So yes, now the nihilist atheists, we become philosophers of morality and religion and truth. How do you like that? Open up Derrida's later work. On hospitality or confession. You will find every single atheist of the continental European tradition is in fact a philosopher of religion. That's interesting. Because I know for damn sure nobody wearing a MAGA hat is a philosopher of religion. I know that a priori.